as one of our viewers succinctly pointed out amidst this fury of media surrounding the incident of uncalled-for violence in Oakland, at an anti-Wall Street protest, these people are not vagrants and uneducated. They are patriots. Associated Press brings us this very troubling raw video of the Iraq War veteran injured in the Occupy Oakland protests. He's recovering, but still in critical condition and on a respirator, and doctors are still considering if surgery is needed as authorities allegedly investigate. Also from elite-controlled the Associated Press. Crews used explosives to breach century-old dam called the Condit Dam in Washington's South Cascades, to supposedly help restore the habitat for threatened fish. It is reported that Pacificorp elected to remove the dam rather than pay to install fish passage structures that would have been required to relicense it. Rescue workers pulled a man from the rubble alive on Thursday, more than 4 days after a huge quake in Turkey, while homeless survivors fearing death from cold begged for aid and some accused the government of a slow response. The corrupt Securities and Exchange Commission today said instead that it was a securities industry regulator that provided altered documents during SEC inspections. The SEC ordered the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, or Finra, to hire an independent consultant and undertake other remedial measures to improve its policies, procedures, and training for producing documents during SEC inspections. Finra is a self-regulatory body for securities firms. The SEC said in a 2008 inspection, Finra office in Kansas City altered 3 records of staff meetings just hours before the documents were turned over to the SEC. The alterations made the documents inaccurate and incomplete, the SEC said. 2 contract workers kidnapped from ships supplying ExxonMobil Corporation's offshore oil operations near Nigeria have been released, the company's local subsidiary said Thursday. In a short statement, ExxonMobil spokesman Nigel Cookingham told the Associated Press the workers taken in attacks on September 30 and October 17 off the coast of Nigeria's oil-rich southern delta were released unharmed. Cookingham declined to offer further details, referring questions to the Nigerian government. The 2 attacks occurred near the coastline of Akwa Ibom State, where ExxonMobil bases much of its operations in Nigeria. The company's oil tanks line the beach and its offshore oil rigs can be seen along the horizon, along with the burning flares from the excess gas released during pumping. In a complete twist of idiocy, doublespeak and propaganda, police sergeants are coming out swinging today against what the globalist-owned New York Post refers to as obnoxious Wall Street protesters. Ed Mullins, president of the NYPD Sergeants Benevolent Association, said his group plans to pursue legal claims against Occupy Wall Street protesters should they cause injury to any of its 5,000 members. Mullins is quoted as saying that, in light of the growing violence attendant to the Occupy movements across the country, particularly as evidenced by the recent events in Oakland, I am compelled to place these so-called occupiers on notice that physical assaults on police officers will not be tolerated. Okay, friends, no violence. Expose provocateurs. Period. However, Mr. Mullins there, we think he should receive legal claims from hundreds and hundreds of protesters injured by police. Dr. Michael Arumi Maiakide, who founded Arik Air in 2002 and serves as its president, was taken into custody by Nigeria's Federal Inland Revenue Service FIRS. Also arrested were Chief Financial Officer Steve Garrero, Senior Vice President Rob Thomas, and Deputy Executive Vice President Chris Nduwul. Authorities say the company owes nearly $3.5 billion $21.6 million in value-added tax VAT and certain withholding taxes. The executives are to be arraigned in Abuja in the coming days. The arrests come just 2 days after the airline became a member of the International Air Transport Association (IATA), an important milestone toward growing Arik Air's international reach through interline and code-sharing agreements with other airlines. The Ohio Department of Agriculture issued a quarantine on Thursday to block the transportation of 6 released exotic animals from the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium back to Muskingum County Exotic Animal Farm. Marion Thompson, the widow of a Zanesville man who appears to have released his exotic animals last week before he allegedly committed suicide, has been reportedly saying to attorneys that she planned to reclaim the 6 animals that survived. According to the ODA, the order was issued because the animals could possibly be infected with the disease as a result of the conditions in which they were previously held. Turkish pine nuts sold in bulk at Wegmans, an upscale grocery store chain, have been linked to a salmonella outbreak that sent 2 people to hospitals and sickened 40 others in 5 East Coast states and Arizona. Wegmans Food Markets Incorporated said Thursday it has recalled 5,000 pounds of pine nuts imported from Turkey by Sunrise Commodities of Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey. They were sold between July 1 and October 18 at its stores in New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Virginia, and Maryland. The Rochester, New York-based chain said the recall applies only to Turkish pine nuts purchased in bulk. Wegmans really is a great locally owned supermarket with an organic store within a store, essentially. Again, in Berkeley, a 3.6 magnitude earthquake and there are no reports of major damage. Although unverified, amateur video reportedly filmed on Wednesday showed women throwing their full-body veils, known as macrame, onto a pile and setting them ablaze in the capital Sanaa. The act was a symbolic Bedouin tribal gesture appealing to tribesmen for help in stopping the attacks on anti-government protesters. Women have taken a key role in the uprising against President Ali Abdullah Saleh's authoritarian rule that erupted in March, seemingly inspired by revolutions in Tunisia and Egypt. A 1.4 magnitude aftershock was reported in Plumas County at 5:42 a.m. Thursday morning, after a 4.7 quake shook the region Wednesday night. The U.S. Geological Survey reported the aftershock about 12 miles southwest of Loyalton, California. A group of gay and married military personnel sued the U.S. government Thursday for the same benefits as straight military couples, arguing it's a matter of justice and national security. The lawsuit filed in U.S. District Court says the government's Defense of Marriage Act violates their constitutional rights and asks the military to recognize their marriages and provide spousal benefits such as medical coverage and the right to be buried together in military cemeteries. Under the Act, the Pentagon is required to ignore same-sex marriages, which are legal in 6 states and Washington, D.C., and were legal for a time in California. The lawsuit comes about a month after the U.S. military officially ended its Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. Okay, friends, not all cops are bad or prone to violence or following orders despite life and liberty, and we certainly need them on our side, so, please remember, they have lives and families, too, a great deal of which never stood a chance against the machine that chews us all up and spits us out, if we're lucky. They no doubt think they are doing good when they wake up in the morning. Save for a notable few, of course. An NBC report details that, for months, NYPD officers and some union delegates have been the subject of an ongoing NYPD Internal Affairs and Bronx District Attorney's Office investigation. The officers are suspected of fixing tickets for parking, speeding and other traffic violations, sometimes in exchange for favors. More than a dozen NYPD officers are expected to begin turning themselves in Thursday night or early Friday morning. The Bronx District Attorney's Office is expected to unseal indictments Friday as the officers are expected to be arraigned in the Bronx Criminal Courthouse, sources tell NBC New York. Charges could include official misconduct and bribery. The officers have all been told to turn themselves in Thursday night. In one of the more bizarre chapters of the sweeping corruption and money laundering sting that came to light in July 2009, a man charged with brokering black market kidneys pleaded guilty in federal court today of trafficking in human organs. Levi Itzhak Rosenbaum, 60, of Brooklyn, NY, who bragged on surveillance recordings that he had participated in many similar transactions over the past decade, acknowledged his role arranging several kidney transplants for fees of up to $160,000. The donors from Israel received $10,000. Governor Andrew M. Cuomo today announced that federal disaster assistance is now available for Oneida County as a result of damages incurred by Tropical Storm Lee. The public assistance declaration makes federal funding available to state and eligible local governments and certain private nonprofit organizations on a cost-sharing basis for emergency work and the repair or replacement of facilities damaged by Tropical Storm Lee. Oneida County was previously declared for individual assistance. A Memphis police officer was one of 25 people indicted Thursday in an alleged drug ring, officials said. Arik Johnson, 35, was arrested at MPD's Mount Moriah station Thursday morning, charged with being part of a ring that conspired to distribute at least 1,000 kilos of marijuana. Hackers allegedly interfered with the operation of two U.S. government satellites in 2007 and 2008, according to a report to be released next month from a congressional commission. The hackers obtained access to the satellites through a ground station in Norway, according to Bloomberg Businessweek, which first reported on the information contained in a report by the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission. The satellites are used for climate and terrain monitoring. A Landsat 7 Earth observation satellite, managed by NASA, experienced at least 12 minutes of interference in October 2007 and July 2008, and a Terra AM-1 satellite experienced interference for 2 minutes in June 2008 and again for 9 minutes in October that year. The report doesn't indicate the nature of the interference, but notes that the hackers achieved all steps required to command the Terra AM-1 satellite, but never actually exercised that control. Research in Motion is being sued in the United States and on its home turf in Canada for a BlackBerry service outage that affected millions of people worldwide. The U.S. Space Agency is preparing to launch what they say is a satellite Friday that will apparently send back data on climate and weather to better help forecasters predict major storms and other changes in the environment. It hasn't yet reached the surface, but residents of the Canary Islands have taken to the internet to suggest names for a potential new islet. There are already more than 500 suggestions. Meanwhile, Spanish newspapers are taking a different approach to the subject, debating who would take responsibility for the new territory. To the south of El Hierro, the earthquakes suggest persistent outbursts of lava, according to the ITER Research Institute on Tenerife. They show a pattern that is typical for flowing liquid, a so-called harmonic volcanic tremor. Presumably, there are constant small eruptions on the ocean floor. But the lava usually clogs the fissure quickly after such eruptions, forcing further magma to seek new channels, exactly what seems to be happening now. In recent days, however, some unsettling measurements have been recorded. The shaking has moved to the north. Because most of the earthquakes in that area have, up until now, occurred at depths of more than 10 kilometers, an eruption is not expected in the area, the local authorities have said. The Air Force has been secretly flying armed Reaper drones on counter-terrorism missions from a remote civilian airport in southern Ethiopia as part of a rapidly expanding U.S.-led proxy war against an al-Qaeda affiliate in East Africa, U.S. military officials said. The Air Force has invested millions of dollars to upgrade an airfield in Arbaminch, Ethiopia, where it has built a small annex to house a fleet of drones that can be equipped with Hellfire missiles and satellite-guided bombs. The Reapers began flying missions earlier this year over neighboring Somalia, where the United States and its allies in the region have been targeting al-Shabaab, a supposed militant Islamist group connected to al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda should be written al-CIA, duh.